Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Hey, y'all. Hey, you. Hey, friend. Hey, boss. Some people hate it when I say that. Some people hate a lot of the things that I have to say. You've been here, you've been listening, or maybe this is your first episode. Welcome. I did a thing. I haven't said it out loud yet because I've learned if I want to do a big thing, I should probably keep it to myself until it's like well underway. I wrote a book. Yeah, just like everybody else, except for this one isn't about me. This one is about us. Its working title is Business 3.0. And this is not a concept I labeled. I've been referring to it as 21st century business building. Yet there's a very large cohort of people building, creating, trailblazing, just like you. And we think about business differently. The challenge is the way we form our thoughts, although it feels like our own process, was taught to us, was handed down generation over generation, school teacher by school teacher, workplace by workplace. And I don't think it's just as simple as, hey, let's do something completely different. Let's break the old world fucking paradigm. And I know that because the reason I have a job is I have been battling these constructs my entire professional life since I was 14 years old. And regardless of how progressive or brilliant someone believes themselves to be, and kind of independent of how hard they try, it is incredibly challenging to the point of repeat and total defeat to do this work. And I realized in order to truly make the change that I believe is necessary, it's not even going to be a choice pretty soon. We have to understand how we got here. So what I'm going to be doing over the next few episodes is taking us back to the beginning. This one very specifically, working title is Power 3.0. But I want to kind of summarize the first half of the book. And then I may even spend my summer reading the book because this isn't meant, I want everybody to have this information. And it's moving so much faster than I ever expected it to. So with that, let's talk about power. Because power dynamics could perhaps be the crux of everything. And the only thing that separates us are these little meat suits we get to wander around in every day. And in as much as we're all having the same collective experience, we interpret it and individualize it so acutely, it feels like we are all alone fighting our own battles. And I'm going to get more and more into this. But in order, I think, to really start to break down what was in order to create what will be and keep ourselves fucking sane and healthy in the moment, we have to understand where our understanding and experience of power came from. Because again, in as much as any one of us may believe we have a really healthy engagement with power, I continually find myself in positions where I am asked to perform in a very patriarchal, hierarchical, colonial, dominant American way. This is ridiculous, but I was building out a schedule and someone who just took a ton of time off wants to take more time off. And my friend, who is a borderline anarchist, was like, tell her she can't do that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It is not for me to tell anybody anything, really. If we can create a structure that enables people to make their own choices and own their own consequences. And that's not you get fired if you don't show up. It's you've created a vacuum, a void of space that needs to get filled, and I empower you to fill that. If that doesn't happen, we'll figure it out. But there's a schedule. You volunteered to work. Volunteer, even air quotes around that term, right? But we agreed upon when you would want to work, what would work best for your schedule. That was facilitated. So now the next step is facilitating that work. But I digress. Coffee. So let's talk about power, not fake power, not title power, not I make the schedule, I'm the fucking boss power, not he got invited to the C-suite meeting, so he thinks he's power. And not this executive presence as interpreted by people who confuse emotional constipation with gravitas. You know what I'm talking about. I want to talk about modern power, Power 3.0, a version of power that will actually lead me with humility, with respect, with camaraderie, because the old model is breaking down right in front of our fucking faces. And we don't have the words yet. We don't have the know-how or the skill set for what is replacing it, but we can feel it. We can smell it. And we can absolutely tell that the rules of the old game are failing. And yet we still keep playing by them by default. That conversation that I had is the perfect example. So it's like when we're taking what was experimented with in the sandbox into the live environment. It doesn't work the same. Things will break, but that's kind of the point. So we get to look at that. We get to understand that. This gives us this idea of influence, but that is not the same as control. And approvals, permissions slow things down. We need more oversight, less performance. We need less decks, but more adaptive, emergent strategy. Some might call this alignment. It's like a very in the moment feeling. And you have to come back to the moment in order to tune into that and feel it. It's challenging. So what happened was we leaned into the machinery of business because every moment could be measured, monitored, and therefore I was going to optimize, profitized. Profitize? That's not a real word. A lot of what we used to call power was never power. It was control. It was access. It was information asymmetry. It was hierarchy. It was budgeted. Approvals and authorities and delays and denials and withholding and force. And it worked, or at least it appeared to work. Let's just say business 1.0 treated humans like machines. Business 2.0 treated information like machines. And machines reward standardization, predictability, command, and top-down linear one-way directional control. And that's just not where we are right now. You know, some of the fundamental shifts we're experiencing is this instantaneous knowing. You know, when you look at all of these historical models, these economic models, this history repeats itself. There are outliers. And one is the instantaneous availability of information. It is no longer top-down. It is no longer controllable. But then the other is the instantaneous response due to software. And that is global. We truly don't know what happens when we introduce that. And then I think we're going to add a third, which is monetary, when we create real alternative economics. But that's for another conversation. So what I am proposing is that Business 3.0 framework gets right to the point, where Business 1.0 is industrial, Business 2.0 is digital, Business 3.0 starts to understand the organization as a living system, not a mechanical one. There's a nervous system, a network, a structure that has to sense, respond, regenerate, and stay, air quotes, in right relationship with the people and ecosystems it touches. So profit stops being the purpose, but it is fuel. Growth stops being the whole religion, but it does become a design variable. So when you make this shift, power shifts, because power in a machine is centralized control, but power in an adaptive system is system capacity. Okay, we just defined it, right? Modern power is not about who can dominate the room. It is about what increases the system's capacity to deal with reality. So let me ask a couple different questions, because even as I read these words, my brain and ego go, well, that's unclear. That doesn't make any sense. We are literally sense making in this moment, you and I together right now. That's power. So we ask questions like, can the organization get clean information quickly? Data, not stories, not interpretations, clean information. Can the organization make decisions that are impactful using that information? Can it distribute authority to where knowledge actually lives? That's been one of the challenges, is when you centralize power, you limit accessibility to learning and to understanding and knowing. And that then centralizes skills. So when we distribute authority, when we decentralize decision-making, it empowers the organization as a whole, the individual parts and the collective. Can the organization respond to feedback without spiraling into politics, blame, or process? So when an issue is discovered, is the organization able to deal with that when something emerges? Can we adapt or adopt or alter whatever that stimulus was? Can the organization adapt without requiring a 6-month identity crisis and branded offsite in Ojai? I joke, but how many CEOs are out there doing ayahuasca right now trying to fucking get the answers to these questions? Am I right? So this is what I'm playing with in terms of power. And you know what? It doesn't show up the way even I assume power should. I find my ego spinning out and going, well, who's going to solve this problem? Because I'm used to being the one who solves the problem. This is creating inefficiencies because time is passing while a problem isn't getting solved. So notice the thoughts that come up, the knee-jerk gut response you have to these concepts, because they are rewiring the way we work. And you have an opportunity to build the schematic. That's why someone asked me the other day why I make this podcast. And I said, because we have to create something different. I do this differently. I approach this differently. I do it my way. It's not good. I mean, it's something, but yeah, if you A/B this with everything else that's out there, it is not the same. At me on that one. So power, again, I'm going to do a lot of A/Bing here to help us understand. I believe when we look at something and we go, well, that's not it, the opposite of it's got to be at least 50% closer, right? So when we understand what's so broken about power now, and again, it's a lot of the assumptions that are being made. It's a lot of the like this morning. I mean, these are inane examples, but I use them, and they're anecdotal for sure. They're just my personal experience, but I use them to help you see where in your life you were acquiescing your agency. You were giving away your power because you've automated their way. So I woke up this morning. I have 50 hours of work to do and what's probably 6 hours of work available to me, unless, I want to kill myself, which I don't most of the time. And immediately I go, well, this is impossible. I'm not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to go do the other things that you want to do today. It's a gorgeous spring Saturday, for context. I have a friend's birthday. I have a show I would like to go see tonight. So these all feel like very selfish, feel self-serving, very indulgent when I have all this work that I need to do. But I'm always going to have all of the work I need to do. And when I ask myself, did it get done? It always does. I have the power to go, I don't know how, but I know it will. And if I do what I do the way I do it, it gets done. Can we choose that instead of texting a bunch of people at 6:00 in the morning and letting them know I can't ... Let's play with this. It's not having all of the answers. It's not knowing how it's going to work and when. Power 3.0 is capacity. It is system capacity. It's not status. It's not titles or labels. It's not being CC'd on every fucking email. And it's not being the only person that knows where the files, the budgets, the passwords, and the bodies are buried. What actually runs the room right now is what you'll hear people call signal integrity. Signal is this ability to transmit all that needs to be heard, felt, seen, understood. So this would feel like decision rights, governance, trust, architecture, adaptive range, and this distribution of information and authority. The reason you feel fucking insane at work doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you are at the leading edge of these concepts or you are, a corporate minion. I know there's not a lot of you out there listening to this, but there are enough of you, and you matter to me because you are the ones that are actually going to be able to take the system down from the inside. You feel insane at work because you are being measured by outcomes and systems designed for last century's metrics. Modern work stages power through these structures, titles, access, language, and proximity to decision making. And it denies people the authority to actually change the conditions that they are being measured by. So even when you grow in let's say, 19th century or 20th century business, your responsibility expands, but your influence doesn't. You're handed increased pressure and outcomes, visibility, ownership, but you don't actually have the discretion or the authority or the resources, let alone the time to succeed. And then you're blamed for that. And this isn't personal failure. This is misalignment. This is structural failure. Gallup reported that less than 1 in 3 employees give a fuck anymore. And this is the lowest engagement at work we've ever seen. And then management, basically everybody outside of like founders and potentially even C-suite, although I'm going to go just CEOs, say that they're responsible for 70% of the work they have no influence in. In other words, organizations load enormous performance and cultural burden onto leaders. They then routinely underdesign the authority and support around the role. That is the scam of modern work. That is where we have all come from. That is how we have all been programmed to think and act. It is our fault because we can't succeed. And this isn't about externalizing your power by any means, because that could very easily be felt almost like victimized, right? We were purposefully set up to fail. And that's the crux. There is something we can do about it. And this is where it starts. We have to give people accountability with corresponding control. Because the opposite, what's happening right now, is what results in all of these haunted, empty workers. And yeah, you see it everywhere. The team lead who is given improved responsibility, but without any additional pay or incentive. The manager who has to increase retention without changing workload. The department head expected to quote unquote drive innovation inside a process designed by risk-averse leadership, dead habits, or a founder who still wants to approve fucking fonts and is like nickel and diming receipts. The executive is expected to move faster while carrying the drag of 5 legacy reporting chains in a culture that edits the truth on its way up. This isn't leadership. This isn't power. This is containment. And the worst part is, I wouldn't say the worst part. The reason I'm making this episode and the reason I'm going to be talking about everything I'm going to talk about over the next couple months is because when you, corporate refugee, go to start your own thing, or when you, creative entrepreneur, stop with a W-2 and start with a W-9, you recreate a lot of this. Constantly, accidentally, elegantly. You leave these rigid institutions swearing you are going to build something more human, more agile, more creative, more sovereign, more alive. But then the pressure hits. Money fears, power and influence fears, identity crises, and suddenly every decision you make looks a lot like the way you used to work. Every client complaint feels like something that needs to be taken care of immediately, kind of like when your boss got in your email, CCing the whole fucking organization. Every hire suddenly feels like an enemy. Every problem, every challenge, every final edit starts to compound with this vertical, one-way, directional need to not lose, to not fail. And it all gets watered down. Everything that you started for and believed in dissolves. And the whole business starts depending on your fucking nervous system. That's how you know. From the outside, for any of you who have built something wildly successful, you know that house of cards feeling. You know that people are like, holy shit, what you've done is amazing. Look at all of your numbers. Look at all of your evidence pieces, your material possessions, your social media followings, your attendees, your employees, your revenue. But you know what that profitability is? It's negative. From the outside, it looks like excellence, but from the inside, it is not just a choke point, it is choking you. That choke isn't power, it's performative. If you know, you know. It is the single biggest threat to your agility, your emergent, adaptive, regenerative growth. So what we need to do in talking about Power 3.0 is understand, how do we reroute this? How do we build a powerful organization for the future? How do you build dependency without authority? So yeah, we're going to need to redefine all these dang words, because it does kind of, it's like hard to even talk about using the old language. So we talked about signal. We talked about making decisions, decision rights versus decision latency. What are we willing to wait for? What actually deserves space and time? Adaptive range, capacity, trust, architecture. These are useful concepts. But how do they play out in this real world of Power 3.0? So these are things I'm playing with. I would love to know your thoughts on this as well. Where are we at time-wise? Okay. I've been trying to make these shorter. I got a little lost in the weeds there. I think I recorded one ad hoc and it was like an hour long. I was like, busy. Even you don't want to listen to your own bullshit for that long. But I think this shit is important. That's why I keep fucking banging on about it. Anywho. Signal integrity is whether reality survives the trip through the organization without getting distorted by fear, politics, ego, or translation drag. I was in a meeting the other day, and the numbers being reported are the best we've seen. But the reality of the day-to-day business is I've never seen it so slow. And whoever's listening to this, I'm not talking about you, because the owner of this business does not listen to this podcast. I know that. Just, if you know who you are. I love you. But yeah, this owner doesn't listen to this podcast and probably should. But I digress. So I had to be the one that said, hey, this is like literally 5 minutes before the meeting's ending as well. And it's the whole leadership team. And everyone's like, blah, 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 everything's great. Like, yeah, just like fucking kicking the can down the road, right? And I said, hey, look, we've got 5 minutes left. And I've only been around for about a year working with this organization. So, help me understand seasonal trends. I recognize the data that we're looking at from last month or even last week is promising, but what I'm seeing in the day-to-day is terrifying. Like, do we need to say that part out loud? I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy here. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is I can say these data points are worrisome. There are other data points that are very encouraging. How do we work with those without a lot of story? Can bad news travel upward without being softened into decorative nonsense? I mean, you heard the way I had to sugarcoat that. That was my version of sugarcoating. Can customer reality shape product design? If we're seeing super slow numbers, do we go to the people and say, where are you? What happened? Where did the sudden drop off come from? Can friction become design and point instead of gossip? can someone say this isn't working, or this timeline is a fantasy, or you, leader, are the bottleneck, or even, hey, this metric is producing worse behavior, and not get punished for ruining the vibe. If the truth has to get dressed up, padded, routed, and deodorized before it can enter the room, that room is not powerful. That room is fragile. So this isn't just me trying to call everybody else out. I've talked about Amy Edmondson before. Her work on psychological safety at work defined it as a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. And her study found that this ability to take risks is associated with learning behavior, very obviously. But also what this is saying is when you can make a mistake, when you can ask questions and raise concerns without humiliation or retaliation, your team learns faster, improves better, gets stronger. So that's why fake power hates honesty. Honesty reveals where the operating model is weak. And I think that's one of the things that AI is doing. That's a whole, I mean, obviously I've been going in and out of AI for this whole year, and I'm going to be going very into it in the course of these sort of next few episodes. But for the now, let's talk about making decisions and Power 3.0. Because decisions are not a fucking organizational chart. Decisions map authority. Who gets to decide what, at what threshold, using what information, with what needs for consultation, at what speed, and with what consequence. Something I have shortened that to by who, by when, or what. A shocking amount of organizational lag is just fuzzy decision rights. Everyone's included. No one is clear. 6 people have decision-making authority, but only one person will get blamed. No one knows who can actually kill the thing. That's what slows work down. That's what creates resentment. And then the company starts confusing volume with rigor. We can have as many ideas as we want, but who's going to execute them? Or we can have as many projects going as possible, but who has the capacity to complete them, to review them, to test them, to learn from them? That's not collaboration. That's confusion. Modern power requires crisp decision rights because clarity reduces confusion and coordination cost. And not because people want a dictatorship, but because ambiguity is expensive. And that's what I've really discovered as like a blatant decision maker. People think I am an authority. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm just not afraid of fucking up because I fuck up everything so often. My nervous system doesn't interpret making a mistake as bad. My nervous system believes moving through this world is inherently mistake making. So keep on fucking going. Try not to feel bad over and over again, like in the sense that no one likes fucking up. So we learn from that. Decision latency is the lag between signal and response. That's exactly what I'm talking about. How long does it take for reality to become action? That learning, that, I don't think I liked the way this felt. Should I do it again? There's a difference when you're strength building, right? When you're gaining understanding. There's another when you're engaging in an activity that has negative results. How many interpretations does it take? How many approvals does it take? How many fragile fucking egos do you have to band-aid? How many meetings whose real function is to preserve someone's sense of relevance or validation are necessary? Old power loves latency because latency protects hierarchy and it gives this illusion of seriousness. It lets people perform importance and it keeps authority scarce. Power 3.0 reduces latency, not recklessly, but intelligently by design. And it shortens the path between information and action. It gets decisions closer to the edge and it builds governance that can move at the speed of complexity. That is not a nice to have. That's a competitive advantage. That's the thing, y'all. This isn't just a fucking hippie or punk trying to tell you these like hidden ways of working. This I truly believe is going to be how we differentiate and succeed. And again, like I said at the beginning, not in the future, but almost without choice very, very soon. So can the company update itself when conditions change? Can it revise structure, incentives, authority, cadence, talent, strategy without turning it into a fucking referendum that needs 10 different meetings? Can you adapt and change and compost what didn't work without telling a story about it? Because Business 3.0 frames through emergence, stewardship, circulation, and enoughness. Not rigid 5-year plans, but living questions. Not scale as the only metric, but the capacity to evolve in relationship with reality. I believe the companies that survive the next 5 to 10 years will be the most committed to what's possible, not the ones who continue to operate using yesterday's data. Successful organizations will be the ones with the broadest adaptive range and the clearest internal response loop. Because trust isn't a mood or a fucking picture on a wall. It is a design. When people know what happens if they speak the truth, when they understand how conflict is handled, especially at work, when they are willing to make a hard call, a tough decision, when repair is real and not performative, and when they recognize if accountability is consistent rather than selectively weaponized, trust isn't just a trending word, it's infrastructure. It is architecture. When trust is weak, organizations pay this distortion tax. The information gets cloudy. The communication gets subjective. And that's one of the biggest challenges we bring with us from the old world. A lot of what gets praised as professionalism is just extraction. The calm one gets more chaos to metabolize. The thoughtful one gets more ambiguity to translate. The reliable employee gets more under-resourced work. The emotionally intelligent player gets unpaid infrastructure to build and hold. And the person who still cares is suddenly responsible for morale in conditions that would make morale impossible. That is covert load bearing. That is extraction. That is taking the things you've been praised to be a good girl and good boy doing and then making you fucking work for it. It's expensive. And we all know what this looks like. It looks like burnout. Burnout is affecting 100% of us now, regardless of if we're inspired by our work or not, because we have to live in this dang world that still rewards that quote unquote professional behavior. So this is why the future of power is not about making leadership better. It's about redesigning the organization as a higher capacity system. So that means less information hoarding, more signal quality, less approvals, more governance, less personality dependent execution, and more resilient operating models, less dependence on heroic performance, more distributed capacity and capability, less fake urgency, more real priorities. That one. Less culture as mood and more culture as infrastructure. And less status-based authority, more context-based authority. In Business 2.0, brand could still get away with being a story, a narrative, messages, positioning, aesthetics, tone, campaign, platform. In Business 3.0, brand behaves much more like an operational truth. It's not what you say. It's what your system reveals under pressure. How do you make decisions? How do you handle tension? Who has the authority to act? What gets buried? What gets rewarded? What gets protected? What gets starved? Where does the money go? Where does the credit go? Where does the risk go? That's brand now. Customers feel it, teams feel it, industry feels it, communities feel it. So that's why Power 3.0 isn't just an internal game. Every single one of those questions is something you individually need to answer, but collectively within organization, wherever that organization shows up in your life, your team, your organization, business, your industry, your community, your environment, etc. Power 3.0 is the capacity of a system to move truth, authority, attention, and resources with enough speed, precision, and trust to respond to reality without unnecessary distortion, delay, extraction, or self-sabotage. That is power now. Not who dominates, not who performs certainty, not who gets the largest compensation package for saying, let's double click on that with a straight fucking face. Fuck you, tech. Power is where anything real can move freely. Can truth move? Can decisions move? Can resources move? Can ownership move? Can accountability move? Can repair move? Can value move? If the answer is no, then that title is fucking irrelevant. Okay, I think I've made my point. I have a lot more points to make, but this is getting so long. So this is the deeper shift. The old dream was just work hard enough, get high enough, and you'll finally get power. But Power 3.0 realizes the system, if the system is badly designed, ascension, promotion does not resolve your powerlessness. It just refines it, contains it, filters it. That's the joke. That's also the tragedy. But for us, it's our turning point. A bigger title inside a distorted system is not liberation. It's not freedom. It's just a more expensive suit. Still a trap, y'all. So if you're building anything right now, a team, a business, a practice, a brand, a body of work, what if you're not in charge? What if you are a signal? What if you are coordinating with your environment? What if you could clarify the authority and therefore the adaptive range to inform your capacity using trust and building out your trust architecture? I've talked a million times about your success blueprint. This is what I mean now. You have a way of engaging in your environment, in your world, in your organizations, in your systems that can actually feel expansive, regenerative. It powers you up, not the other way around. So how do we do this? What are my takeaways? Let's get tactical. Look at your choke points, not the sexy ones. The obvious broken bullshit where being needed still feels good. And it blows me the fuck away. I was having this conversation with the founder yesterday, talking about another client and saying they create chaos so that they can put out fires and feel valuable. And it was like no one had ever said those words in that order to him. And he went, holy shit, where do we all do that? Where do we only experience our value through other people's neediness of us? And so then how do we create that neediness? By limiting their ability to be successful and execute without us. Supplies fucking, I was thinking about my friend helping her kids tie their shoes because she didn't want to wait. I mean, it's like that pervasive. That's your drag. That's your tax. Reduce it. And that's what I mean by distortion tax. So once you understand the choke points, leadership is dysfunction, you can look at where does my truth get reformatted for safety? Where am I editing, softening, translating, or deodorizing reality so that it becomes bearable? That's extra cost. That's extra effort. Cut it out. And now last, and perhaps most challenging, define power for you, not the loudest person in the fucking room, the way you execute and deploy and deliver. Is power in your system based on titles, fear, approvals, performance? Does it look a certain way? Play with that. Because when you feel clear, that's your signal, my friend. When you feel like you could do a little bit more, that's your adaptive range. When you're willing to give it a go, that's trust. And so this ability to move reality without frying yourself or the people you're in exchange with, that's Power 3.0. That's optimizing for something we don't even understand what is possible yet. That's fucking power. And here's the thing, we get to redefine these definitions whenever the fuck we want, because we will continue to learn and adapt and sense into what's emerging and hold that because we have the capacity for it. That's why this is the way forward. Oh my gosh, what are we talking about next? Look at me trying to be a real podcaster. Okay, so next week, we're going to talk a little bit about our American history. I know not all of you listening are from America, but you have all asked me what the fuck is wrong with America. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about. But how that, how just the founding of this actual country, at the time of industrialization influenced the way we think now and how we work with each other and build and create now. Like how 200, 300 years ago influences our art now. So, okay. I lost the screen. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my rants. I'm really excited. We're going to nerd the fuck out for probably the rest of the year. I mean, I guess we've been doing that this whole time, but it's about to get, it's about to get librarian level. I love you. Thank you for being here. See you soon.